Welcome back to Tab, and join us today as we make this British classic, a Victoria sponge cake, introduced to British tea time by who else? Queen Victoria and her children. So check that out. Follow along as we make this delicious yet really simple cake. This week, all week long, we're making British tea time treats. Jews, when they came to England, wanted to be more British than the British. And when they got here, in mass, this institution called afternoon tea was already going strong. Instituted by Anne, the 7th Duchess of Bedford, because at the time when Anne became Duchess, the norm was to have breakfast at around 9 or 10 in the morning, and dinner wasn't until about 12 hours later. So not surprisingly, around 4 in the afternoon, she got peckish and she called for tea. This is in the upper classes. The lower classes, wanting to follow suit and drink tea and have that meal, started having it as dinner. So unsurprisingly, many British people call dinner tea. So here's the difference. There's low tea and high tea. People mistakenly think the high tea has to do with the upper classes and the low tea the opposite. Not true. So the low tea is what the upper classes were having because they were having it on low tables. You know, this afternoon invitation, come and snack on some beautiful cake. High tea was eaten at a high table by the working classes. Confused or not? But one of the best things served at tea is a Victoria sponge cake. Called so because Queen Victoria had 9 children. She was concerned that fruits and seeds, which was commonly found in a cake, would be a choking hazard for her children. So she introduces a very plain cake into the nursery with a couple of different fillings inside. It is a plain cake, but it is, oh wow, delicious in its simplicity. And like many British recipes, doesn't require many ingredients. It just requires some really quality ones. So follow us as we make Victoria sponge cake. And what we have here is really the simplest of ingredients. Self-raising flour. If you can't get self-raising flour, we'll give you an equation how to create your own. Butter, sugar, and eggs. That's it. We're gonna add some vanilla and milk and salt just to bind it all together and flavor it. But essentially, that's what it is. And why I love my scale is because it's 225 grams of each ingredient. So very easy to remember the recipe offhand. So we're gonna start with our flour. It's a sponge cake, so we're gonna sift our flour to make sure that it's nice and airy. And if you do not have self-raising flour, you would sift the flour. Ooh, it's getting all floury around here. Self-raising flour and the baking powder together at this point. So that is sifted and set aside. The next thing I'm gonna do is beat my eggs, which I already have. Don't scramble them, don't cook them, just beat them. And now we're gonna beat our sugar and butter together. So into my mixer goes the butter, goes the sugar. Ideally, it would be super fine or caster sugar, but welcome to the new normal. There is none. In the supermarkets, I could have processed my sugar in the food processor to get it finer, but I'm gonna skip that step today. And now I'm going to beat the butter and sugar together for 10 minutes until it is like a mousse. So we're gonna get started. So our butter and sugar have been beating for the last 10 minutes, and let me show you how light and fluffy that is. It's almost mousse-like. There's still grains because I didn't have super fine sugar or caster sugar to use, but it's gonna be okay. I'm not too worried about it. The next step is with the mixer running, I'm going to stream in my beaten eggs. So we'll do that pretty slowly. until all the eggs are incorporated. The reason we're doing this so slowly is because we want to make sure the mix doesn't curdle. So very, very slowly I'm adding in the beaten eggs. If perchance it does start to curdle, no big deal. We'll stop the machine. We'll add a tablespoon of the reserved flour. But right now it's still looking good, and now it's really getting loose-like. Yes, Victoria sponge. I can't even explain how delicious this cake is. It's insane how delicious a simple cake can be. I'm not big on decorated cakes. I think they're beautiful, but I'd rather eat a simple cake, and this is just stunning. All right, the rest of my eggs have gone in. Excellent. And I'm gonna pause the machine. And my mixture did curdle a bit. I'll show you. Hold on. I don't know if you could see, but it's starting to separate, but I'm not too worried about it because I have all this flour that's still gonna go in. So I'm gonna wipe as much of the batter off my beater as possible. Batter beater, oh my goodness, all right. And that comes away. You can do this with a handheld mixer. You can do this by hand, but wow, do you need some strength to do that, because my arms would get tired after a good, 30 seconds. To go for 10 minutes, oh wow, okay. Next is the flour. I'm gonna actually add it all in at once, and rather than use the stand mixer, I'm gonna do this by hand, trying to keep that light fluffiness that we just incorporated into the butter and sugar. So it's all going in by hand. And it's a little scrappy, which is what I expect, because I still need to add my final few ingredients. So once all the flour has been incorporated, check that, it's looking a bit scrappier than you would want for the dough. And what you do is called a drop test. It's not dropping. So that is not yet what I wanted. So let's add our last few ingredients. A pinch of Maldon salt. I love this stuff, but any salt will do. And then, oh my goodness, this is gorgeous. It is vanilla bean paste. Finally, I know I've been weeks without vanilla. I've been using my homemade stuff, but this stuff is so amazing. It's thick and filled with tiny little vanilla seeds. It's incredible. So that's going in. And my last ingredient is some milk. I'm gonna start with 2 tablespoons. It may need another 2, but let's see if 2 is enough. So add that in, and then let's mix again. And there's something so beautiful. I don't know, is it beautiful about this making your own cake, and just with the simplest of ingredients and it coming together like there's no pretenses about this cake. All right, there we go. So now let's do our drop test again. So not quite where I want it. Even tapping is a little hard. I'm gonna add another tablespoon of milk, and we'll see if we need to go in with the last one. But definitely key, add one in at a time until you get your desired consistency. Okay, there we go. I can already feel that the cake is where I want it. So I'm glad I didn't go with the last tablespoon, and there we go. See, it's dropping, and tap, and it comes right off, which is perfect. So here I have 2 8-inch, 20-centimeter tins. They happen to be springform. The more traditional way to do this is in what the British called a sandwich tin, but this is what I have. I've lined it with paper, I've greased the paper, I've floured the sides. It's a lot of work going in here, so I'm gonna divide my batter between the 2 pans. So my cake batter is divided between my tins, and I don't know if you could see, but I made a slight depression in the center. The hope is that when the cake rises, it doesn't rise more so in the center, and maybe it'll be a little level, but I'm not sure. Now it's going into an oven that's preheated at 190 degrees centigrade without the fan, without that convection. If all you have is convection, lower the temperature to 180, and it's going in for about 18 to 20 minutes without opening the door until it's been 15 minutes so that we get this nice even rise, if at all possible. While the Victoria sponge cakes bake, I'm gonna make a buttercream filling. The usual to sandwich between a Victoria sponge is jam and whipped cream, but because I wanna make this ahead of time and serve it on Shabbat, I'm going for a more stable buttercream. It'll give you the same texture of that cream and jam, maybe not as light, but it does have a little more staying power than whipped cream. So into my mixer goes softened butter. This is 125 grams, but not to worry, the recipe is above this post. And there we go, equal amount, icing sugar, confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar, I'm not quite sure what you call it. And yes, the beater should be attached. So let's put that back on. And now we're just gonna beat it until it's light and fluffy, and then we're gonna add some more vanilla bean paste to it. Sugar and butter are beaten together. They're like a smooth cream. I'm gonna add half a tablespoon of milk, half a teaspoon of vanilla, and then it's done. It's ready, just waiting for the cakes to come out of the oven and cool down. Our Victoria sponges are cooled and they're ready for assembly. So I actually sliced off the top of the cake. There it is. That's because that was quality control. Make sure it tasted good. It does. It's really buttery and rich and delicious, and yet light, as you can see all the little holes in the sponge. I sliced it just to level it off. You don't have to do that, but I want a nice flat surface to work with. What I have here is raspberry jam. You could use strawberry, you could use blackberry, whatever flavor you want. I just put it in the microwave for 10 seconds to loosen it up so it spreads easily. And here I have our buttercream frosting, which is nice and cold and a bit stiff. So my last component is a cup of very hot, just boiled water, and my favorite offset spatula. So I'm actually going to dip the spatula in water, let it heat up for a little bit while I take my entire amount of buttercream frosting and just put it on the top of the cake. I'm gonna use the spoon just to like kind of mush it down a bit, but what I'm really gonna use is my now heated offset spatula. So I have a towel here ready. I'm going to dry off the spatula, which is nice and hot, and it's just going straight through the frosting and helping me level it off. And I'm pushing it towards the edges. And I'm going to dip it again in water. You can use this trick when cutting a cake that has a lot of cream or very cold, or a cheesecake. This really does help. You go straight through, and for a few seconds, the metal retains the heat of the water. And I'm just pushing it out towards the edge because you really want to see the cream peeking through the edge. So we're gonna keep on doing that until the cream has an even layer covering the top of the cake. So one very even, very delicious layer of vanilla bean buttercream frosting on top of my cake. And now that just leaves the jam to go on top. So loosening it up means it actually pours straight off the spoon. 10 seconds in the microwave should do it. And once more, we're just pushing towards the edge of the cake. Oh my goodness, this is getting very exciting. All right, check that out. Our raspberry jam is all over the cream, which just leaves us with our second layer of cake. I peeled off the paper. You wouldn't want paper in between. And we're just gonna gingerly slide it onto, yeah, check that out. Oh my goodness. How exciting is that? You could just see the jam peeking through. The last bit we'll do just before serving is sprinkle it with some icing sugar. The traditional is superfine or caster sugar, but I don't have any, so icing sugar it's going to be. Oh my goodness, I really hope you make this at home. It's gonna bring a smile to everyone's faces, yours especially, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.